Cents Per Mile, featuring Charles Gracie, Paul Gibson, and Josh Haynes. Everyone knows the trucking industry has issues, but most people are afraid to talk about it. Someone's got to do it. With loads of recruiting and marketing experience and backed by the largest driver audience in the world, we deliver carriers the driver perspective, find solutions, and help make sense make sense.
Thank you for tuning in to Cents Per Mile. I'm your host, Charles Gracie.
And I'm your co-host, Paul Gibson.
Hey, I'm Josh Haynes. What's going on, guys? What are we talking about today?
It's our 75th episode. Most podcasts don't make it past the first one.
This is true. Just like there's a lot of good ones out there, there's equally as many bad ones.
Yeah, so thank you for sticking with us with this. So we haven't done Behind the Wheel in a couple weeks, and basically what we've been doing is building up a bunch of information that CDLLife has gathered, and we're going to give you the driver perspective by numbers, a boatload of information. It's going to be great. With that, the usual stuff, we are on Apple Music, we are on iHeartRadio, we are on Spotify, we're also on YouTube. So anywhere that you consume what we do, if you could like, subscribe, rate, and that helps get us a little bit further out to where more people hear about us.
And you can go to centspermilepodcast.com where you can submit a topic, to be a guest, or even to become one of our great sponsors.
Sponsors? Who's our sponsor today, Charles?
We have TAFS. Put your trucking business in the hammer lane. Go to tafs.com.
Also, if you look right here on the screen, there's a little QR code. And the Future of Freight Festival, put on by FreightWaves, is coming up in Chattanooga in November. Tickets are a lot, but that's because it's loaded with so many things, so much fun stuff, so much information, so much networking. And if you click that QR code, you can get a pretty solid discount because you know some people, and we'd love to party with you.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time. I'm looking forward to it, and it's in my hometown. Everything's great in Chattanooga.
Yeah, you don't even have to travel. Kind of jealous about that, but it is time for...
It's time to go behind the desk with 10th Street.
Thanks for having me to talk about the driver perspective. Before I joined 10th Street, I spent several years behind the wheel as a professional driver myself. So when I talk about the driver's perspective, I'm speaking from real experience. Being out on the road is rewarding, but it comes with its challenges. Long hours, being away from family, and sometimes feeling disconnected with the companies we're driving for. That's why it's so important for carriers to not only ask for feedback from their drivers, but really listen to it. Drivers are on the front lines and they know what's working and what isn't. They've got insights that can help make everyone's life easier, from improving routes to making safety protocols more practical. But it all starts with making them feel heard. At 10th Street, we're helping bridge that gap between drivers and carriers. Our Insights tool is designed to help carriers gather driver feedback, analyze it, and most importantly, act on it. When carriers engage with their drivers in this way, they're showing that they value their team. And that goes a long way towards retaining drivers. So my message to carriers is simple. Listen to your drivers. Use tools like Driver Pulse and Insights to make it easier to connect, gather feedback, and take action. You'll not only keep your drivers happier, you'll also keep them longer. And for my fellow drivers, don't be afraid to share your thoughts. It's your experience on the road that helps shape the future of this industry.
At TAFS, we offer unparalleled trucking excellence and service. Enjoy exclusive benefits like fantastic tire discounts and 1-hour advances for quick cash. Recognized as the top factoring company in 2023, we're your partner for success. Access business loans, manage finances with ease through our client portal, F2 fuel card, and mobile app. Contact us now to see how we can help your trucking business thrive.
All right, so it's time to make sense, and talk about our main topic of the day, which is driver surveys conducted by CDLLife, which is interesting because it's kind of like the behind the wheel segment that we usually do, where with them having the largest driver audience and us being powered by them, we can get real opinions from real drivers about real issues. But also, we're not going to do this alone, Charles.
No, we're not. I brought my good friend from Freight Waves, Thomas Wasson, onto the show so we can get some real-time reactions to these results from these awesome surveys. I mean, this is like behind the wheel on steroids.
We definitely have over 30 different stats.
So let's hop into it, and welcome back on Cents Per Mile, Thomas.
Pleasure to be on. Gonna add some zest to this pot of information we're about to be serving.
So the first survey was on the impact that the election would have on the trucking industry. 41% said that they were unsure. 32% were positively believing it was going to impact the election. 15% said negatively impacts the trucking industry because of the election. And 12 said no impact. I mean, that 41% are unsure of the impact that the election will have on the trucking industry.
It's like the story of my life right now. I can kind of relate to that. I like the 12% though, the cynics. They're like, nothing matters. It's all the same. Big shout out to them.
12% of people think that nothing changes. And historically, through legislation, they have a lot of reasons to believe that.
So the next one is the current state of the economy. Obviously, I have a lot of people that have different views about it, but 38% of the drivers say it's very negative on a scale of very negative, somewhat negative, neutral, somewhat positive, very positive. So the majority of drivers definitely think the economy is crap. And I think that's what most Americans feel like.
It is crap right now. And if you're a driver, it's a hard pill to swallow because you're doing a job that's hard. For 38% of drivers to feel negative about the economy in the job that they're doing, which drives the economy, that's powerful.
You're working for less. I mean, you're doing the same amount of work. You're getting paid a lesser rate. That's the worst feeling in the world, especially in trucking. You want to get up to that 70 hours per week. And, oh, by the way, you just got a pay cut kind of beyond your control.
I think a lot of Americans are going through that, but the trucking ones needed a pay raise, not a cut.
Well, with that being the future, talking about the election and whatnot, the majority of drivers, 28%, are pessimistic about the future of the industry as far as all this was related.
That sounds about right. I've had when I manage drivers, the only time they're happy, even when it was the boom time, but they also is like, well, I could be doing better. So, I think that may be a consistent trend. I'm not shocked by that at all. Because if I were in fleets right now, even if I was in fleets in 21 and fleets now, drivers always want more. That's why a lot of them are driving. I used to joke, you don't go to hear my wonderful voice. You're there to make money. So it makes sense, in my opinion.
I have mixed feelings on that because you want them to be optimistic about the direction of trucking. They're working within it. And that means we failed as an industry if they're not feeling warm and fuzzy about it.
Well, one thing that I did find interesting is the next two options were 27% for somewhat optimistic and 24% for neutral, which only leaves less than 20% who were very optimistic or pessimistic. So that is kind of interesting that it's all very kind of in the middle. But as far as policy priorities for drivers, what drivers view as important is pretty even. So 34% coming in number one is fuel price regulation. 32% is infrastructure improvements. 24%, which is me, labor laws and working conditions. 24% driver assist technology and automation, and 24% other.
I'd be interested to know what is all encompassed in other, but those are all pretty close together, and it's interesting that you have fuel price regulation and infrastructure up there as the front runners, because those are things that directly impact them, and they know it directly impacts them. If you're a fleet owner or owner operator, they directly impact your bottom line and the experience of doing the job. If you're a company driver, you're not necessarily worried about the fuel cost, but you know that directly attributes to what you're making.
I think parking as well, infrastructure situations and fuel. Those are the two, salient things. You're filling up every few days. You're going to be there at the fuel island. You're going to know if there's enough room or not. And so I think that's definitely a consistent top of mind because, that's where you're making your stops. You can't it's really hard to fit in a Holiday Inn with an 18-wheeler.
And you're seeing it in a lot of the social media channels. A lot of truck parking has come to the forefront. You got drivers speaking out against paid truck parking. You got, people taking heat over what vehicles that they've chose for marketing purposes to put on there for their paid truck parking. So, I mean, it's starting to become a pain point, and people are voicing their opinions on it.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting though too is the infrastructure and the fuel price regulations are the number two things on that list that actually affect their money. Um but yeah, so another thing speaking of that is there is a concerning trend as far as truck drivers are likely to leave the industry within the next 4 years. 27% said very likely, 22 said neutral, 20% said somewhat likely, 19% said very unlikely, and 12% said somewhat unlikely. So almost 2/3 of drivers have considered leaving the industry in the next 4 years.
Yeah, I mean that's substantial in itself. You're talking 69% of the drivers that were polled are somewhat thinking about getting out of trucking at some level. And out of that, 27% of them said very likely. Those are ones starving the death right out. I mean, right out the gate.
That's normal. That's, in my opinion, that's par for the course. We had new fleet just upgraded, finally on the road. You had your trainer. Now you're on, first seat driver. Half of them would not make it past 6 months. The ones that did make it to the end of the year, that 25 to 30%, were statistically likely to last about 2 to 5 years. And there is like a smaller sliver that would last longer. So when we looked at it, that was the first thing. And the second part was even worse. So imagine you're part of that cohort that beat the spread. Well, if you had about 2 to 3 bad weeks in terms of your paycheck being below average expectation, you were like 50 to 100% more likely to consider quitting. And so it's like, you can't win. It's like a sausage factory at large fleet. So I'm not shocked by this at all, because that's kind of is the ongoing industry problem.
Yeah, well, and another thing too is this next stat: drivers are people, and this is very clear. I think everybody can agree with it. So truck drivers responding to whether or not Congress will succeed in bringing legislation that benefits truck drivers to a vote or enacting it into a law. Um, 66% said, no, I do not believe they will. 20% said, yes, but I have some doubts. 9% said, I'm not sure. And the 5% that clearly don't pay attention to politics said 5%.
That's the ones that don't tune into the news, or that are super optimistic because they see something that they didn't do research on and didn't realize it's failed several times before. It just doesn't progress any further. But I mean, that's people's faith in the government.
Oh, it's like the problem with trucking as well. You have ATA and OIDA. They're the largest in terms of interest groups. But the problem is, if you look at it from a legislative standpoint, trucking is such a smaller portion of the whole thing. Think of the AARP, think of the NRA, think of the bigger influence groups, that you have to get attached to a bill. And I did this once, by the way. I accidentally crashed in a Model UN. I started a Tibetan Liberation Front, and I crashed one of the real bills. And so the problem with trucking, and this is what they don't want to tell you, is that not only do you have to try to find sponsors, but then you have to piggyback on a bill just to get your stuff going. So it makes sense why drivers are like, well, probably nothing's going to really happen, because it's such a critical component of our infrastructure that is not top of mind to legislators, and that drives the economy. But at the same time, it's treated almost as an afterthought. Can I please get some of this omnibus bill, please? Because we haven't passed a budget ever. I think we just keep passing handshake and agreements. And so for trucking to get a slice of that pie, it's like that, please, sir, may I have some more? And you're basically in one of those Charles Darwin, whatever the author is. You know what I'm talking about. One of those guys.
Well, I mean, and that's directly indicative to how people view the government progressing any of their best interests.
All right, well, let's move from politics to just some more general stats. All right, so this one actually blew my mind. How much do you prioritize respect in your interactions within the trucking community? And 60% said 6 on a scale of 1 to 6, so extremely.
I mean, does it seem that crazy that they just want to be respected? And the fact that you have companies listing it as a job perk is kind of absurd.
We value you. Here's new assets. Yeah, respect is very little in trucking. It needs more respect, and it's ironic that a freight brokerage or carriers are touting that we will respect you and humanize you as part of our selling points.
Yeah, the part of our company package is we respect you.
All right. And so the next one is that 49% of drivers are indicating that they are on online forums or communities. And the majority of respondents, 59.1%, said they were extremely interested in staying up on the latest news in trucking.
That checks out. I mean, it's shocking though how many people don't realize, because I was talking to somebody, I was at the ATA event in Nashville, and someone's like, so are drivers on, X, are drivers on LinkedIn? And I'm like, yes, there's heavy communities on there. And if you're not paying attention to that, then you're missing the opportunity to put your voice out there and join the conversation.
They're also on the CDLLife. I mean, that's what we do. We have at CDLLife, we have a whole community. And we do news. Thomas, you guys do news over there at FreightWaves.
Yeah, the number is only going to go up. Drivers are on the road. If you're OTR 3 to 4 weeks out before you get time at home, I mean, you're going to need something. And I think there's a void to fill, nowhere to go but up. So it's really, really exciting to see.
Right. And I mean, and that's, like I said, that's what we do. And another interesting thing with that is 42% of respondents. So one on a scale of 1 to 6, just like previously, said 42.4% said that it's very important to have a sense of community, and that's important to their job satisfaction.
I that checks out completely. The isolationism in the truck is a thing. And I mean, CDLLife built a community so drivers can link up with one another and share those important conversations and have a place to have them.
That's huge. You can't just have a company approved community because it feels weird. You want to vent and complain in your company's forums. It's like, well, so yeah, like CDLLife, we see Facebook groups, we see X communities, LinkedIn, pro groups.
Thomas, HR is not an approved platform to go and complain about your company.
That's why trucking struggles. You own a trucking company, you want to have a community and tell your drivers, but also if you hear them complain too much, you're like, oh, that's the one I need to get,
Although one of the best experiences I had was Paul and I went to a carrier's terminal, and as soon as you walk through the door, before you even get greeted by anyone, the first office is HR's.
So the next one is what drivers do in their spare time. Outdoor activities, 36.2% said that's what they do. 16.1% said DIY projects. 11% said sports. 10.8% said pets. 9.9% said reading/listening to books. 6.7% said technology. 6.4% said fitness, and 2.7% said video games.
That's more. 2.7. There's more. I had a driver play so much video games, I had to get welfare checks on her because she'd sleep in.
I'm betting some people voted there and just felt guilty about tapping that one. So they hit the outdoor activities. They're like, well, I play my Xbox in my truck, and that's outdoors.
That's an outdoor activity. Or I fuel up the vehicle on duty time. That's an outdoor activity.
But you are seeing a huge movement of drivers that are doing that stuff. You see more drivers travel with bikes, and more drivers take hikes and the walks. And you got Project 61 right now where people are trying to build awareness behind that. I mean, there's a big initiative going on right there to try to have a healthier lifestyle. So I could see outdoors moving up.
All right. So the next one is career motivations. Essentially, it's extremely important to a lot of drivers, 39.5%, to have some option for career growth, and also job stability. So, yeah, that's interesting. That there really is people wanting to move forward, which matches that getting out of the truck in 4 years.
Well, it's hard. When do you become a senior driver? Like, that's the biggest challenge I think trucking faces is that you get a tenure and you get more cents per mile. You gain more cents and get more cents. But trucking really doesn't have a great job at giving you the status. And you want the status. So you can get a cool rap or the million milers. You get a few different things. But that's an ongoing problem because people do want to feel like they're having career movement. But at the same time, being behind the wheel, it can be really hard to give them that what they really deserve.
I like how you said cents per mile, and we're here making sense make sense. And you said behind the wheel, which is essentially the thing we're doing. But with that, in addition, what motivates most drivers during challenging times in their career, 29.9% said supportive work environment. 26.8 said incentives and rewards, 22.9 said personal growth, 10.8 said recognition, others said 9.7.
Well, that checks out too, because if you think about it, they're all showing up to work, which means they want to get paid. So incentives, rewards, that goes a long way. But the personal growth, that checks out. They want to see a path. Yes, you can slap a sticker on the truck. Yes, you can make them a driver trainer. But eventually, they're going to want to get out the truck, and you try to hold them there as long as you can because you need these professionals with that experience. But you also have to have paths for those that want out, and you need to dictate what those look like.
I like the ones where you can become a dispatcher from seat to office seat or something like that, because some of the best dispatchers I worked with were former drivers. And then it kind of fills that other bucket where you want to feel respected. Like the driver dispatcher relationship is the cornerstone in most large fleets. And it's like matchmaking. You don't know. I could have someone on my board and then they'll actually really like the other person. And that's one of the things I think trucking really has to work on, is just give them that pathway, because it's going to continue to help out for your back office and your front office.
All right, and so real quick, I'm just going to shotgun all through this next one. It's why drivers make the purchase decisions that they do, and then we can talk about it on the back end. So the majority of drivers actually make their decisions based on brand representation and brand reputation. So 34.1 find it very influential, which is the majority, versus the as far as peer recommendations go, it's 26.5%. It's more important for them to have a brand with a good reputation than it is for a peer review. And another thing, the next one is, in their driver's opinion, how well do truck manufacturers understand the specific needs and preferences of truck drivers? And that's on a scale of 1 to 6. And the majority at 26.5 falls right in the middle, which is kind of an interesting, didn't expect that. Truck stop insights, as far as their favorite truck stops, it is Love's and Pilot and Flying J by far, at 41.4% and 41.3% respectively, and what they buy. So 62.3% of drivers, when they go on a truck stop, buy coffee. That's followed by meals, snacks, water, soda, and then energy drinks, tobacco, lottery tickets, nicotine products, and other is the last one. They were able to give multiple answers. That's why it doesn't add up to 100. But you can see how that slopes off on the screen, where they buy what they buy, and why they buy it, where they buy it. So 43.8% said convenience and location, 27.9% said price, and then some of them said brand familiarity, recommendation from peers, and other, making up the last like 25%. What are the reasons for choosing a truck stop? Number one is actually fuel card benefits, followed by parking availability, followed by free parking, followed by location, followed by cleanliness, loyalty programs, then convenience store offerings, and reserved paid parking is definitely last. So a majority of truck drivers, 85.8%, had previously participated in loyalty programs or offers when making purchases. So those reward programs are real, and drivers do like them and take advantage of them. Now, providing information about product availability and discounts in advance can appeal to planners when highlighting the convenience of making last minute purchases. So drivers are very likely to buy something that's on sale, on promotion, 47.4%. And a lot of them are kind of combined, whether they're making spontaneous purchases or whether they planned it out, by far. And next would be understanding the frequencies, like how often truck drivers purchase accessories and supplies for their truck. And most of them said every few months. So 31.2% said every few months. After that, it was monthly, then rarely never, and weekly. Rarely never at 24.3%. Shout out to the company drivers. Yeah, and so with that, then the next thing is truckers typically rely on reviews and recommendations when conducting research. 36.1% of the drivers said they rely on online reviews. More, and next was 27.6 is recommendation from other truckers. After that, in-store visits, then manufacturer websites, and then social media, and then other. So more so than the ads, they're actually looking for people talking about it on the internet. In addition, 42.6% of respondents deemed that online reviews and ratings as somewhat significant. So 42.6%. Now, 18.2% of truck drivers travel with pets and prefer purchasing their supplies from pet stores or big box stores is the next one. And then after that is online, which seems like it'd be weird to be able to get your stuff if you bought it online. And then other. And the majority of respondents indicated that between 16 to 25 days on the road each month shows their reliance on truck stops. And 32.8% of the drivers said they were out 21 to 25 days. 23.9% said they were out more than 25 days. 20% said 16 to 20. Only 14% said less than 10. And only 8.6% said 10 to 15. Understanding their hobbies outside of work, which drive these purchases. 27% of drivers are into project cars, 26.9% are into motorcycles, 11.7% are into boating, ATVs, 11.3%, 6.1% motorhomes, and the other 44.6% is just other.
I think that's one of the big, it kind of the biggest vibe I feel is that when you're stuck at truck stops, not only are you getting a lot of stimulants and stuff, so we saw in the buying data, coffee being the biggest thing that a lot of them purchase, but the lack of information, whether it's looking for reviews or asking other drivers, that's just a fundamental problem all across the board. I don't know if I should trust the truck stop. I don't know if I should trust my shipper. I don't know if my trailer model make is pretty good. So there's a huge opportunity. Shout out to the boating people. Fire Crown Media has a boating. I'm sure we can make a crossover, but those it's pretty wild because it's hard for drivers. I think that's such a big market that this research is starting to show, trying to figure out what they want.
Well, trying to understand what they want. How many people go out there and dissect this and try to actually understand what they want? What do they want to see? What do they want to buy? What do they want to see more of? What do they want to see less of? These are the important conversations if we're trying to improve the overall experience for the men and women on the road.
Actually, with that, you nailed it. The most important stat, which is why I saved it for last, is when it comes to purchasing prices or making decisions, how important is just being there in front of their face, like being available, whether it's a product that they see at a truck stop that happens to be there, whether it's a company in an ad, all you have to do is be there. 39.9% of drivers said those decisions are most of the time made on someone or something being there. 27.9% said sometimes, 23% said every time, and only 7.8% said rarely, and 1.4% said never. So being there is the best way to get chosen.
Now, go figure. You need to have your brand or your product exposed to as many people. That's marketing 101. And the fact that people aren't doing that is crazy. So the fact that the drivers are reconfirming this for everyone, if you're listening, just be there. Be everywhere you can be and make sure you're putting yourself out there correctly.
You just got to be reliable. You're in a hurry. Driver's in a hurry. You have the one job in the world where your hours count down instead of counting up. If you're a brand, you're a company, you're a news provider, you're an influencer, it doesn't matter. Be consistent. Be trustworthy. Be there.
All right. Well, thanks, Thomas, for coming on the show and hanging out with us. I know that was a lot, and I'm pretty sure we're all probably a little overstimulated, but it is that time. So thanks for coming and hanging out. We're excited to announce CDL Connect sessions powered by CDLLife. 8 engaging webinars filled with insights and fresh strategies to transform how you connect with drivers. Join us Thursday, October 24th for our 5th session, Effective Lead Nurturing. Driving applications to hires with Bobby Thompson, Chief Product and Technology Officer of CDLLife. Discover key strategies for lead nurturing, orchestrating nurturing processes, unifying lead flow, picking up applicant signals, and leveraging retargeting to boost hires. Click the link in the description to register and browse future sessions.
Thank you. I'm thinking that truck stop coffee now.
And thank you guys for 75 episodes, many more to come. Thank you for tuning in to Cents Per Mile. I'm your host, Charles Gracie.
And I'm your co-host, Paul Gibson. See you next time.